We're going to take a more analytical look at the way a multidimensional array is indexed here. We're looking at array 3D, which we created up above, and we'd like to analyze this based on a color coding. This is a 3 by 2 by 2. Let's use green by 3 dimensional array. 3 by 2 by 3. That's the shape of our array. And the way we understand this is in dimension number 1, we have 1 and 2 and 3 members. In our second dimension, we have 1 member, 2 members. 1 member, 2 members. 1 member, 2 members. That's our second dimension. And in our third dimension, I'm not going to do all of these, but we have 1 member, 2 member, 3 members. So that's where we get this shape from. A point of confusion is often that these are zero indexed, which means that when we want to reference these, we don't use a 1 index, we use a 0 index here. And rather than a 2 index, we use a 1. And rather than a 3, we use a 2. This is a point of confusion often. The same thing could be said for our second dimension here. This is not 1 indexed. This is a 0 index, and this is a 1 index. And the same thing could be said for our third dimension, where this is not a 1 index, it's a 0 index. This is a 1 index, and this is a 2 index. 0 indexing is going to be n minus 1. Whatever index we have, we're going to subtract 1 from it. What if we would like to access all 3 elements in this third dimension? How would we go about that? Our first dimension is index 2 here, and our second dimension is going to be index 0. So in our 3D, we want to get the second index and the 0 index, and that should give us that 555. Remember, another way that we can access these is using square brackets throughout like this, and it's going to give us the same result. Well, now that we're inside here, what if we want to access only this element? We simply access the first index of the second dimension. So what we've done here is to access by index. How do we access by slice? Well, we have an example of this down below. Let's talk about what's going on here. We're using a negative index firstly, so this is going to go from backwards to forwards, right? So this is negative 1 of our first dimension. This is negative 2 of our first dimension, and this is negative 3 of our first dimension. So we should be accessing index 2 of our first dimension by using this negative 1. And then we're saying we want to go from 0 to 1, and that would be exclusive. So really we're only getting the 0 index because the first index is being excluded. And then from within there in our third dimension, which is really equivalent to this, we're going from 1 to 2, but remember 2 is exclusive, so we're only getting this. So let's run this and see if we get that 55. And indeed we get the 55. So this is accessing values through index, and this is accessing values through slicing. 2 different approaches. Let me clean this up a little bit. So now we can actually also assign values here. We could make this equal to 34, and then we can output this RR3D. And you see we've assigned the value 34 to that. We could also do that here, so 43 and ARR3D again, and output that. We've changed it now to 43, so we're assigning values rather than just accessing values. So one more exercise we might try here, perhaps, to change all of these values in a broadcast way. Let's use this cell. So we definitely want the first dimension here. Let's put that in. We want the first dimension. And in our second dimension, what are we looking for? Well, in our second dimension, this is 0, and this is 1, so it looks like our first dimension there as well. So let me comma 1, and then remember we can broadcast a value into here. Let's put 999 in each one of these areas and see what we get. We have broadcast 999 to each member of 1, 1.